So I had this fun idea when I looked at the actual names of the boards in the game that maybe we can discern some lore here and go on tangents about Age of Sigmar and the Mortal Realms lore from just reading the names and the descriptions of the different boards in this game. That's just a very intriguing idea, so let's just start off with the Shadespire boards. So, Shadespire is the setting for the first season of Warhammer Underworlds, and it's also known as the Mirrored City. And the first board we have here is called the Mirrored Well, so that's a very clear reference to the Mirrored City. Next up we have the Shayishan Star Dial, and Shayish is also called the Realm of Death, and the Amethyst Realm. It is one of 8 mortal realms comprised entirely of the Amethyst Wind of Magic, the necromantic energies of death. And a star dial is simply a predecessor to the modern clocks and watches. Before watches and clocks were common in our world, people estimated the time by using sundials during the day and star dials at night. So yeah, that's it for that board. Next up we have the Shattered Tower. This is most likely just a reference to one of the towers being destroyed with all the turmoil in the Mirrored City. And the last of the board here is called Cataphragm's Reliquary. So a reliquary is basically just a container for holy relics, and the Cataphragms were the ancient human rulers of the city of Shadespire who were condemned and punished by Nagash for seeking immortality and thus withholding his tithe of souls, basically. And they were actually the first mortals to discover that souls could be captured within the Shade Glass, which is a major feature in the first 2 seasons of Warhammer Underworlds. They used the Shade Glass to transform Shadespire from a desert outpost to a vast city. So yeah, that's the boards of the first season. So the next season of Warhammer Underworlds is called Nightvault, and Nightvault is a dungeon below the city of Shadespire. At the time of this season, Nagash has located a bitter aura of hatred and self-pity emanating from the lowest level of the city, and there lay the sprawling subterranean dungeon called the Nightvault. And the legend tells us that during the height of the city's power, the Cataphragms had locked away those who had sought to subvert or disrupt their search for knowledge, rivals, thieves, and would-be conquerors. Over the years, the dungeon filled with thousands of these dissidents, and the Nightvault slowly expanded. Additional levels were constructed deep below the earth, and lightless catacombs patrolled by the Cataphragm soul-powered automatons. Basically, Nagash set some of these prisoners free, but they were not given freedom. They were given shackles, basically, and they became the Thorns of the Briar Queen that we see in this season. So, the first board here is called Soul Refractor, and we know that the Shade Glass could capture souls, and this was part of the ritual to create immortality by the Cataphragms. And Refractor is, well, refraction is basically the phenomenon of light being deflected through the interface between one medium and one other. So these soul refractors are also part of the block text terrain you could buy for this season. It looks like this. Next up we have the Penitence Throne, and penitence is the action of feeling or showing sorrow and regret for having done wrong. So we could imagine that this is probably some sort of torture device that you place a prisoner or a wrongdoer in. So this is probably the ruins of such a device. Next up we have the Cursed Oubliette, and an oubliette is a secret dungeon with access only through a trapdoor in its ceiling. It's where you put the absolutely worst criminals, so it's reasonable to have such a dungeon cursed, right? And we can see at the opposite sides of the board we have the prison doors as well, framing this board. And at last we have the Ruptured Seal, so we know that Nagash messed with the Nightvault and set these prisoners free, so he probably broke the seals and unleashed hell upon the Mirrored City and the Sigmarites trying to intervene with what he was doing here. So that's Nightvault. And then we move on to the Living Mountain of Beastgrave, and the first board here is called the Shrine of the Silent People. And the Silent People is a very interesting feature in this season. We also have the Silent Relics, which are actually quite good upgrades. But never mind that. The Silent People is really a mystery. None now living know who, or indeed what the Silent People truly were. Their echoes haunt Beastgrave still, with visible in crude cave paintings, weird statuary dotted throughout the mountain's depths. In places, the eroded suggestions of their form crouch atop stone pillars and line winding pathways. In other, their graven faces can be seen near the arched lintels of collapsing portals. The cracked remains of their features all the more eerie for the incomplete mosaics they form. They are mostly deeply unsettling, somehow insectile in nature and heavy with a sense of ancient malice. Some claim that they have seen the statues twitch, catching the subtle movements in their peripheral visions. Others whisper of a constant feeling of being watched, or claim to have heard scrabbling, clicking sounds. So, obviously a very prominent feature in Beastgrave, so yeah, clear lore reference there. Next up is the Wormgrave, and this could be a reference to a lot of things. We know that the Beastgrave is a beast grave, but it could also be a reference to the great worm that spat the worm spat out. So the lore behind the worm spat is that they actually got swallowed by this huge beast and then got spat out in Beastgrave. This is probably an older skeletal remain though, but yeah, a fun little reference there. Next up we have the Abandoned Lair, and this doesn't really mean all that much. It's just the remnants of a lair with a lot of bone residue basically. And the last board is called the Living Rock. So Beastgrave is called the Living Mountain. And there are many people living in and around the Beastgrave that revere it as a god. So it is said that the mountain is alive itself, right? And that Beastgrave lures explorers into the labyrinthine guts of its innards. And while the name Beastgrave refers to a single mountain, the primitive tribes that live here often refer to the region around the mountain as Beastgrave, in an all-encompassing presence that watches over them with a silent hunger. So that's the Beastgrave boards for you. Next up we have the Direchasm, and here I'm gonna bridge the Shadespire to the Beastgrave. So Beastgrave is infected by the Cataphragm's curse, which means that you can't die basically. So that deprives the mountain of its sustenance. In its hunger, Beastgrave awakened before Gur's primal resurgence was ready, releasing the solid amber that has previously filled the region, known as Direchasm. Within the mountain's roots, warbands are consumed by the mountain's powerful emotions. The rooms of Direchasm are dark, only lit by red light that glows in clefts and gullies. Tomb-like rooms are filled with riches and treasures. Some form primeval civilizations that have been trapped within the amber before living memory. The walls are rocky and hot to touch, while the ground shifts as though the mountain itself is moving. So the first board here is called Hive of Sacrifice, and it's not really clear what this means, but paintings and statues have convinced people that these silent people created tunnels within Beastgrave, or were priests who gifted the mountain offerings. So gifting the mountain offerings sounds like sacrifice to me, so it also probably very closely tied to the silent people, this board. Next board is called the Amber Trap Nest. So we know that molten amber rolls down the corridors to engulf entire chambers. Carcasses of fallen beasts gnawed to the bone by unseen scavengers are swallowed by the amber tides. In some areas, entire walls of floors are formed from smooth, opaque amber that recedes into the distance for leagues upon leagues. Staring too long into the golden brown depths causes explorers to see ancient treasures just out of reach, strange lights of the tortured features of those whom mountain has claimed. The mountain's hollow hunger becomes more apparent as rocks split open into yawning cracks to devour the bodies of the fallen. There are actually treasures to be found here, and several amber stone weapons are featured in the seasons of Beastgrave and Direchasm. Next board is called the Pool of Fangs. So this might be a feature of the mountain itself, or it may be a huge beast trapped in the actual amber here. The last board here is called Menhirs of Binding, and a menhir is a tall stone put in a vertical position by people in prehistoric times. So this is a ritual site, probably a remnant of the Silent people then. So that's the board of Direchasm. Folktales and rumors give 1,000 names to this sunken labyrinth. Shadowflux, Deep Harrow, the Grey Cells, False Home. Ask the elves, and they would name this labyrinth Ulara Idon, Harrowdeep. It is a title as any. The first of these boards are called the Ultimatum Engine. There is really not much in the text to be found while searching for these specific words, but I found a particular segment in the text here intriguing. Fragmentary legends of Harrowdeep are known across Algo. Unsurprisingly, given the deceitfulness prevalent across the Grey Realms, these myths change with each retelling. Some details, however, are remarkably consistent. It is known that one can only enter Harrowdeep when the Orb Duplica, most darkly fabled of Algo's moons, said to be home to beings that defy mortal comprehension and have entered a pact with the shadow god Malarian, is at its apogee. Where the moon's sickly unlight falls, whispering whirlpools may form, and I do believe we see 3 whispering whirlpools in this board, and they are actually lethal hexers here. Any body of water from the open ocean of the Hellflux to the swamp gas shroud bogs of the Mist Isles can be afflicted. Should the orb's gas pass through a realm gate, it can even curse seas beyond Algo. So this might be the flip side of that whirlpool, I guess. Those trapped in such whirlpools are pulled beneath the smothering waters to emerge in the pitch dark halls of Harrowdeep. The next board is called the Chamber of Genesis. Genesis being formation or creation, basically. The Harrowdeep was only rediscovered in the Age of Sigmar. Queen Kiatan of the Morladron was the Idoneth exile who first established the undersea haven of Uramala Othal, where Cainite and Deepkin sought freedom and autonomy from the rest of their kin. Yet autonomy was not the thing that drew Queen Kiatan and her people to the lair of Harrowdeep, but the subtle insinuations and promises of shadow demons, ones that echoed the hints that Kiatan had discovered in her occult research. The voices spoke of swirling portal deep beneath the ocean of the Hellflux, known as a Waking Gate. If a mortal were to seek out this portal and pass through it, they would emerge on the other side renewed, with all their bitterness, rage and self-doubt shorn away, which is very, very tempting for an Idoneth. So this rebirth may be what's hinted in the Chamber of Genesis. I'm reaching here, probably because we're not really supposed to know what's going on here. Next board is called the Profane Larder. There's not much to go by here. Profane is basically the opposite of sacred, and larder is a place where you store food, so I really don't know what to say about this board. And the last board is called Halls of Sublimation. Sublimation is when something solid turns into gas without first becoming liquid. So something very powerful is at hand here. There's not much to go by here either, but I can say this, that there are special structures within Harrowdeep that have been given name by those trapped inside its depths. For example, like the Halls of Hidden Eyes and the Vaults Mysterium, which was also a card featured in the Harrowdeep set. So this is probably describing the faith of someone trapped in here. So yeah, doesn't really sound good, does it? So let's move on with Nethermaze. Those who follow the spiraling labyrinth of Harrowdeep to its very nadir find themselves entering an even more nightmarish place. The Nethermaze, a bizarre and ever-morphing domain of pure shadow magic, shaped by the will of ancient slumbering entities. Those luckless beings discover only an array of greater and more maddening horrors. The sinkhole at Harrowdeep's nadir leads to an inverted reflection of the upper halls, a maze even darker and more dangerous than its mirror. And the first board here is called the Inevitable Morass. So morass is basically a swamp of boggy water, and I mean this could be a pretty general reference, but the fact is that the walls here are filled with shade glass, hurled far and wide when the labyrinth was pierced by the Cataphrines curse, and where these fragments are embedded, the walls drip black liquid as the inky waters of the penumbral sea find ingress, along with oozing boneless creatures from the ocean floor. They settle into thigh-deep pools that travelers must wade through, feeling the slimy caress of unseen tentacles curling around their sodden boots. So yeah, Maybe a reference to that, who knows. And I'm actually just going to speed up the rest of the boards here, because they don't really tell us that much. The Tortured Coil, Oblivion's Pillars, and the Abyssal Depths. We don't really know what it's a reference to, other than that the Penumbral Sea is spilling in and all sorts of skeletal remains of watery giants are floating around here. So yeah, let's just move on to Nullwood. So the timeline has moved on since the era of Beastgrave, basically, and the immense predatory mountain known as the Beastgrave has been shattered, pulled apart by god-summoned magics, its demise surely hastened by the warring factions fighting their bloody skirmishes within its rocky inert. Many of these warbands perished along with their prison, but others yet endure. The bloody struggle for survival and dominance goes on. In its death throes, the great edifice revealed ancient tunnels long forgotten, realm-spanning passageways that allowed a fortunate few to escape the cataclysmic death of Beastgrave and enter a new and equally fearsome environment, the tangled underworlds that run far beneath the ravenous forest, known as the Nullwood. So when the Seraphon void ship, known as the Eye of Sotek, plummeted into the realm of beasts, its geomantic engines were gravely damaged. These gigantic devices were intended to manipulate the environment surrounding the temple ship, rendering the lands more hospitable to the Seraphim's physiology and providing them with a bulwark to keep their enemies at bay. However, the force of the crash caused the temple ship geomantic devices to malfunction, sending out waves of realm-shaping energies and leading to a surge of uncontrolled growth. Over the years, these energies have molded the already perilous environment of the Nullwood into a massive tract of almost impenetrable forest, in which carnivorous creatures grow with rapacious swiftness. Predatory trees are the most prolific form of life in this palace, the most infamous of their kind being the Null Oak. And this installment of the board lore will be very much shorter, because in the Nullwood rulebook we can actually find the description, so we don't have to do any guesswork. The first of the board is called the Mistmarsh Tangle, and this is where the predatory vapors strip flesh from bone. Quite gruesome. The next board is called the Visceral Coil, where the Gnarl Oaks, previously mentioned, crushes its victims and digests them. The third board is called the Stricken Swamp, where the lifeblood of Gur has spilled onto the surface and stagnated. And the last one is called Moldscape, where the elder Gnarlock's bark falls away to reveal their horrific nature. Then we move on to the Word Hollow. Beneath the Nullwood's forest floor lies a warren of caverns and tunnels, hollowed out by the roots of the insatiable trees. The detritus of 1,000 wars has found its way into this sub-terra, though to venture here and attempt to reclaim them is a test beyond most warriors. The Nullwood gives up nothing easily, especially if that prize languishes within its bowels. And same here, we have the full description in the actual book here. So the first board is called the Seam Split Folly, where the Word Hollow's roots seem to burst with unnatural hunger. The second board is called Root Hall Bleed, where the grisly life fluids of the Nullwood pump like a foul stinking river. The third board is called Flesh-Right Vortex, where warring roots coil together and form gnashing oaken moss. And the last board is called Tendon Hollows, where one wrong step can see a warrior plunge into the forest's innards. And so we have arrived at the last, for now, season of Warhammer Underworlds. The Deathgorge, one of Gur's many hungering maws, encapsulate the bestial struggle of the realm within its craggy cradle. Once revered as the Deathgorge by the Orcs, it bore witness to great stomps of mega-gargants feeding on the mortals that sought to test their mettle within. It saw the fall of the Dark God's armies at the hands of the Iron Yaws. It changed hands yet again as ogres charged through its rocky gullet, driving out the gargants and greenskins and infecting the steep gorge with the Everwinter curse. Now the Everwinter has inextricably sunk its teeth into the Deathgorge. It coats the chasm's walls with impenetrable frost and chokes its tunnels with air cold enough to freeze living beings from the inside out. Great ice stalactites puncture its rocky halls, the rime-clad skulls of adventurers and native creatures looking down from within them, their souls petrified in eternal agony. So before talking about the boards here, I'm just going to talk about something that I mentioned here in the lore text, and that was the Everwinter. That's quite an interesting phenomenon in the Age of Sigmar lore. The Everwinter is a mystical snowstorm of terrible and divine power, capable of instantly freezing anything that falls into its grasp, that follows the Beastclaw Raiders. So the Beastclaw Raiders are a type of ogre tribe that wander through the mortal realms, devouring everything in their stead, leaving nothing but a wasteland of cracked ice and frozen bones. The cold wind are the harbingers of their coming, their vanguard emerging from behind whirling snowflakes. Followed by the supernatural blizzard called the Everwinter, they are constantly driven to find fresh hunting grounds, ravaging the regions in their path. So will we see more ogres? It's not unlikely, is it? Very intriguing. So, the boards. The first board is called the Glacial Tomb, a chamber where the skeletons of flesh-eating cetaceans, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, basically a whale kind of a deal. And yeah, we can clearly see the remnants of some skeletal whale here. Oh, cetacean is the correct pronunciation here. Cetacean. Very good. Okay, let's move on. The next one is called Frost-Racked Ruins. The ruins of a forgotten settlement crushed to rubble by an underground avalanche. Next up we have the Rime Howl Scouring. The Everwinter has frozen this river in mid-flow, transforming its waves into razor-sharp spears. And the last board is called the Ice Swirl Maw. Maelstroms of grinding ice continue to churn, devouring those luckless souls who step too close. So that's it, folks. That's the entirety of the Warhammer boards, excluding the two, I believe, boards from the actual Arena Mortis set, because who cares about Arena Mortis, right? Yeah, this has been very interesting. I've probably done a lot of bad guesswork here, but I did certainly pick up a few things along the way. I have never really paid much attention to the boards, and indeed not their names, but this has given, for me at least, the game some added depth, and hopefully you guys learned something as well. And for all the things that I probably mispronounced or was wrong about, please feel free to point them out. I don't mind learning or being corrected, so yeah, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. Bye! This is Mats again, chiming in to thank you for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and comment, and to not miss out on future content, ring the bell as well. And if you really liked this video, feel free to click the thanks button just below this video. And if you want to support me even further, you can now become a channel member and claim the title of Critical Focus Fan. Until next time, take care, bye.